Welcome to College Smart Radio, helping you understand the true cost of college and tackle the runaway costs of financing a college education. College Smart Radio is hosted by Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz, founders of Westface College Planning. Now, your hosts for College Smart Radio, Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz.
Welcome to College Smart Radio. If you have a newborn and you have dreams of sending him to Harvard or UCLA, you have a lot of savings ahead of you. You need to come up with a savings plan early and stick with it for the next 18 years. On today's College Smart Radio program, we're going to discuss all the factors that should be considered when deciding where to save the college funds, and we're going to review the most common methods that parents are using today to save for college and relate those to those key factors that should be important in your savings plan. Hi, I'm Beatrice Schultz. Welcome to our weekly show, College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of a college education. Our show is all about bringing up-to-date and practical advice to parents who are dealing with the cost of a college education for their kids, with some private schools costing well over $60,000, a UC costing $35,000, and a Cal State University running $25,000. Parents need more help than ever. We bring you that help by sharing ways to pay less, tapping into financial aid, and prioritizing your source of funds to make sure you get through the most expensive years of your life. Based on our education and experience, we share our insights with you week in and week out. Mark and I are owners of the San Carlos-based college planning business, Westface College Planning. And we're also owners of Westface Financial and Insurance Services. And we are investment advisory representatives of the Westface Financial Advisory. We host workshops and webinars on financial planning, college financial planning, and consult with parents on a daily basis. In addition to our insights, we bring in experts in many areas of the college process, from counselors, financial professionals, financial aid officers, student coaches, parents, and even students. You'll learn firsthand the ins and outs of how to pay for college and survive financially. And in addition to our show, you can find lots of powerful information on our website, collegesmartradio.com. We have many articles with up-to-date information on navigating the waters of paying for the runaway cost of college. We also have a monthly e-newsletter full of content about college planning. And we have a link to our free community parent workshops and webinars that we host to teach parents about how to pay for college and how the financial aid system really works. So let's get into today's show. On today's College Smart Radio program, we're going to calculate or talk about how much parents need to start saving now in order to have enough money saved for college. And we're going to talk about the factors that need to be considered when deciding where to save those college funds and what kind of accounts or what kind of savings methods can be used to save for college. The earlier you come up with a savings plan, the better, and you'll need to stick to it for many, many years. The first step is to come up with a plan to save. The next step is to decide where to save all these funds over the next 2 decades. On last week's show, Mark and I discussed and calculated how much you need to save for college and some of the factors that are important in putting together your savings plan. If you missed that show, you'll want to download the podcast at collegesmartradio.com. There are many methods used by families saving for college for their youngsters, including traditional investment savings accounts, UGMAs, which is a Uniform Gift to Minors accounts in the minor's name, an UTMA, a Uniform Transfer to Minors Act account in the minor's name, 529 College Savings Plan, and many more. On today's show, we're going to talk about these factors, and we're going to talk about all of these plans in relation to the factors that are important in putting together a plan. Last time we talked about the 4 key components that need to be part of a savings plan. Well, I guess we started with talking about how much a family will need to save if they have a newborn today, 18 years from now. And then we talked about the key components of a savings plan. Let's go over some of those factors that we talked about.
Sure. Last time we were talking, you shared the cost of colleges, from state colleges to UCs to private. And we picked the UC example to use and a newborn. So the UCs today run about $32,000 a year or $130,000 for 4 years. And then you shared that the tuition cost and room and board had been going up about 5% a year, so that parents starting today could be staring down the barrel of a $350,000 college bill in 18 years from now. And we know inflation's real. We looked backwards, and we know it's real backwards. We know it's going to be real forwards. Will it be 5%, 3%, 9%? Who knows? But it makes sense to plan for something bigger than just real-time dollars today. So then we talked about how much to save, and we looked at some different scenarios. But we came up with a baseline scenario that we can use, which was a parent today that wanted to put away money every month to pay for that UC tuition for the one child in 18 years from now would need to put away around $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, and earn 4.5% interest on that money year in and year out to total up to $320,000 for that college. And then we talked about where to save. And the attributes that I shared for any savings plan, whether it's college or retirement, have to do with 4 key components. And then we're adding on 2 more after that. But the 4 key components are the amount or the actual process of saving the money, the investment strategy, access to the money during the saving period, and then spending the money. And that's where we wrapped up last time, having covered some aspects of savings, the investment strategies, the access, spending. And then today I think we want to talk about taxation and the impact that taxation has, which is across all of these attributes. And then you shared some attributes around financial aid visibility for some accounts versus others. So is taxation where you want to get started today?
Yeah, Mark, let's talk about taxation, how important it is in our decisions of the place we're going to save the savings plan. And then we'll bring up some examples of savings plans that families use. And we can talk about all those 4 aspects plus taxation plus the important factor about invisibility or visibility for financial aid purposes.
Right. Okay, good. So taxation is interesting because taxation impacts many aspects of the plan. Does taxation impact the savings? It does. There are certain types of strategies out there where you could save for college and taxation could impact the savings. For example, if you plan to save for college inside a retirement account, a qualified plan, or use deferred compensation, taxation would be a factor there. During the accumulation of the money, taxation is a big factor. Are you in an environment where you're paying tax on your gains year in, year out? And if so, is your investment strategy driving gains that are capital gains or ordinary income? Things that are very important to the ultimate result. And as a matter of fact, I ran a quick set of numbers that said in our scenario where we're saving $1,000 a month, making 4.5% interest in a tax-free environment, that grows to $320,000. If we accumulated that same amount of money, same interest rate, but we're in an annual 30% tax rate environment, and those earnings were ordinary income, if that was your strategy and you made that same 4.5%, because of the annual taxation, you would actually end up $50,000 short of your goal of $350,000. So having money in a annually taxable account is quite punishing on the growth. So taxation impacts the investment cycle.
So as an example of not that we're going to get into too many examples, but an account that would be taxed every year would be, for example, ordinary income, perhaps if you had your money in CDs.
Absolutely. Yep, great example. So taxation impacts the investment cycle. Does taxation impact access to your money? It does. Let's say, for example, you are accumulating money inside a tax-favored account. Let's call a 529 an example of a tax-favored account. And let's say you wanted $100,000 halfway through your savings plan for a period of time to do something with, and you pulled that money out of the 529 plan. Well, I'm not a tax expert, but I know enough to know that the taxation of that money coming out of the 529 plan could be quite devastating. It would, I believe, be ordinary income as well as a penalty. Certainly you want to talk to your tax professional about any aspects of specific tax, but from an overall strategic perspective, you need to consider taxation on every account when it has impacts on access during the time. And then we get to spending. Now, obviously, when you're going to spend the money, depending upon what type of an account you've accumulated, taxation can be very impactful because an account might give you tax-free growth if the money's spent on college. It might not give you tax-free growth if it isn't. 529 again as an example. So the taxation needs to be considered across all of these. So you need to understand what you want And then after you understand what you want across these aspects, I think it's important then to look at the lineup of options, the menu of types of plans that are available, and match those up to what you want.
I think it's really important for families to be thinking about taxation and including the access to money, not just thinking about, well, if I get any earnings on a 529, I know it will be tax-free if I pay for my college with it. Appreciate your insight on the taxation there, Mark. You're with us on College Smart Radio. We all know that college is expensive and will most likely be some of the most costly years for a family. Understanding how to navigate the college costs to save everywhere you can is a smart thing to know. To help families beyond this radio show, I host community workshops around the Bay Area several times a month that explain the cost of various colleges, how the financial aid system works, and things to consider to prepare yourself for this tremendous expense. Don't forget you can go on to collegesmartradio.com, click on archives to listen to the last show that we podcast and also the podcast for today's show. You can also find my workshop schedule. We'll be right back on College Smart Radio.
College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz continues in moments on AM 1220 KDOW. For more information on today's topic, visit collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. Contact our hosts at collegesmartradio.com or call 650-587-1559. Now back to College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz on AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of college. I'm Beatrice Schultz. I'm talking with Mark about where to save for college and different college saving plans. Mark, we just talked about taxation as one of the important factors in thinking about where to save your money. Let's now actually take some examples of different plans that are available and talk about how what factors should be considered for each of these plans. I think it'd be great if we can talk about 529 plans, UTMAs and UGMAs. Let's talk about people just saving money in their mutual funds in their after-tax investment account, and also talk about saving in cash value life insurance and a whole life insurance policy.
Sure. Those are four common approaches. So first of all, with regards to the 529 plan, let's just work across our sequence here. As far as saving in a 529 plan, we mentioned that we need a couple of things. One, we certainly need enough contribution capacity to put money into a plan, and a 529 plan has a lot of capacity. As a matter of fact, the most restricting aspect of that is typically taxation of gifts, not necessarily the contributions to the 529 plan. But I think most people would feel that saving in a 529 plan is easy, and that's good. The second aspect, investing. Now, the 529 plans are interesting because the investments are, I would say, are relatively limited in that, depending upon the state plan that you're in, you're going to have a finite number of investment options, typically mutual funds and typically some blend of equities and or bonds. So if your investment strategy is very straightforward and say you want to have a lot of your investment strategy in equities, a 529 plan might be great. But if your investment strategy is that you want commodities, you want gold, you want grains, you want oil, who knows? If that's your investment strategy, then a 529 plan isn't particularly accommodating because it doesn't have those kinds of options. As far as access to the money, a 529 plan is pretty restrictive. There's not very many circumstances where you're going to think it's a good idea to go into your 529 planning and pull money out because of the tax penalties. Now, as far as spending the money, as long as it's being spent on college, we're getting the taxation treatment that we want, which is tax-free accumulation of our growth over time because it went to college expenses. Now, if we pull the money out and we don't spend it on college, we know that there's going to be taxation and penalties on that money. So a 529 plan is a very good plan for a lot of people, but it certainly needs to be looked at across all of these aspects. And as far as financial aid visibility...
Well, for financial aid visibility, 529 plans do count as assets that are in the parent's name. So for every $100,000 that a family has in a 529 plan, that would impact their expected family contribution calculation by $5,600. They assume that 5.6% of that 529 can be paid for each child And it can be a heavy factor if a family is organized enough to have a couple of $100,000 saved.
Sure. So the second kind of plans that we wanted to talk about were actually gifting money to children and doing it through a custodial account, whether an UGMA or an UTMA. Now, of course, when we go through our matrix here, when we talk about savings, well, we've got lots of flexibility. We don't have any contribution limits other than, again, the gifting issues, which may be an issue. And we certainly have availability for outside help. Other people can contribute to those accounts as well, just like the 529 plan. As far as investment strategy, boy, it's pretty much wide open because we're talking about really having that money inside a brokerage account where the investment options would be quite numerous. So that's pretty broad with regards to investment strategy. As far as access to the money, I would say not very great because you've gifted this money to the child, and while the parent is a custodian, they certainly have to act with a custodian eye towards that money. And I don't think a custodian eye towards the money would be buying a new boat for mom and dad. So once that money is gifted to the kids, access, I think, is fairly limited. As far as spending the money, well, I hope your child sees the world the same way you do, because depending upon what state and what plan you use, at 18 or age 21, that money is going to be the child is going to be the owner of that money. So they might spend it on college. They might want to go on a worldwide tour. I don't know. But that is certainly one issue there.
And a big issue is for these uniform gifting accounts is that now this asset is in the child's name. So for financial aid purposes, every dollar that's in an UGMA or UTMA account, the government assumes that 20% of it can be spent on college. So if you have $100,000 in an UGMA account, that will include your expected family contribution or EFC number up by $20,000. It can have a huge impact on financial aid.
Wow. And as far as taxation goes, this account is taxed year in and year out. Now, the question is, whose tax rate? Well, it depends on how much money's there. And again, that's a detailed question that you'd want to talk to somebody who's a professional in taxation. But I think we all know that money inside one of these accounts, it's a child's account. If there's too much in there and there's too much passive income, the government's aware of that and actually has rules that creates a tax treatment much more like the parents than the child's. So it is not a very favorable tax environment in that there's tax due year in and year out. So the third kind of account we want to look at is, how about just a brokerage account? Why don't I do this in my regular brokerage account, either with my broker or a self-directed type of account? Well, there's a lot of flexibility in that environment. You can certainly put a lot of money in there. The contributions are easy. Other people can contribute to it. The investment strategy, again, wide open. Whatever you can kind of think of, you can invest in inside that environment. Access to the money, wide open. You can pull that money out. It's your money. There's no issues there. As far as spending the money, wide open. You don't have to spend it on college. You don't have to spend it anywhere else. Unfortunately, it is the most punishing tax environment to be in, because that money will be taxed year in and year out. So like my example I gave earlier of somebody who was accumulating that $1,000 a month, tax-free versus taxed year in and year out, the difference can be $50,000 when it comes time to pay for a college tuition, which is quite substantial.
And from a financial aid perspective, the brokerage account is going to count the same as a 529 account. So it'll be about 5.6% of the amount that you have in that account that will go towards the calculation for your financial aid eligibility.
Right. The fourth that we wanted to talk about was a permanent life insurance policy, a cash value life insurance policy, maybe a whole life policy, a universal life policy, something like that. Now, these policies are fairly complex to understand, but the essence of these policies are that a parent could accumulate cash value over time in their life insurance contract that could be used for paying for college later. And let's talk about these aspects of a life insurance policy. From a savings perspective, it is pretty much wide open. There's no gifting issues. There is certainly insurability of whoever the parent is to make sure that they can have some capacity to put dollars inside one of these plans. The investment strategy is, on one hand, relatively limited in that if you're using a plan, then you are pretty much going to pick the insurance company's portfolio as the engine behind your earnings. But remember, with most of these policies, they do come with provisions to allow you to take collateralized loans against your dollars, which if you wanted to invest in something else along the way, you could. And that addresses the third issue, which is access. If you desire access to your money in a life insurance policy while those dollars accumulate tax deferred and ultimately hopefully tax free, then the collateralized borrowing capacity allows you access to the money because you've got a collateralized borrowing facility available to you by contract along the way. And then when it comes to spending the money, you have a lot of flexibility there as well, because the dollars can come out of the policy either as a surrender or as a loan that might be refunded back into the policy with additional retirement savings. So from a tax perspective, the advantage of a life insurance contract is that the dollars go in after tax, and then the accumulation happens tax deferred and ultimately tax-free as long as the policy ultimately stays in force. So it can have very similar tax treatment that a 529 plan would have. So, and from a financial aid perspective...
saving money in a cash value a whole life insurance policy is the most advantageous from a financial aid perspective, because any cash in a life insurance policy is not counted as a parent asset for any of the financial aid calculations as of today. Those rules can change, but they haven't. So even for the private schools, when they look at what assets a family has, they're going to add up the brokerage account and the 529 account and consider it a parent asset. They're going to take the UGMAs and the UTMAs and consider it a parent asset. But a child asset, but they will not ask the question about what kind of cash value you have in a life insurance, because they tend to think of it as a death benefit, which is one of the other features of a life insurance contract, is that you do have the death benefit. In the horrid case that you died before your child went to college, there would be some money available to pay for their college.
So it's pretty complex. You've got a matrix of what you want. You have a matrix of what's available. And I would just encourage everybody, don't think one solution fits all. Many people find 2 or 3 different solutions meet their ultimate needs. And there is no such thing as the perfect plan for every family. Of course there isn't. So a lot of advice about, well, you're saving for college, it has to be a 529, or it's got to be an UGMA, just doesn't make sense. And once you look at this matrix and you educate yourself and talk to some professionals, you'll be able to pick out the right plans, not necessarily plan, but the right plans for your situation.
Well, that wraps up another weekly show of College Smart Radio. We hope you picked up some new information today that helps you figure out ways to manage the runaway costs of college. You can hear us each week here on KDOW, 1220 AM, Saturdays at 3 p.m. We promise to bring you up-to-date information from the front lines of helping parents deal with the most expensive years of their lives. For a link to a podcast of this show and our prior weekly shows, go to our website, collegesmartradio.com. In addition to the podcast, you'll also find a schedule of our upcoming shows. Make sure you print out or bring up on your tablet our glossary of college planning terms for reference during our future shows. It's a complicated topic to navigate, and without knowing the terms, it's easy to get lost. Also, plan on joining us at one of our Tackling the Runaway Costs of College workshops or webinars. These workshops provide parents with the steps to take right now that can often greatly reduce the cost of college, even if they have little time to prepare. At our workshops, you're going to learn the facts about the real cost of attendance, comparing state versus UC versus private colleges. We'll dispel some myths about financial aid eligibility. You'll be introduced to important college financial terms such as FAFSA, CSS profile, and expected family contribution. And the most value will be that you will start the discovery process to determine how you will pay your share of the college costs. We'll help you plan for and navigate the paying for college process. With over 100,000 Bay Area students applying for college each year, our workshops are popular and we do run out of seats, so you do need to reserve a seat at the workshop. You can do so from the show's website, collegesmartradio.com. College financial planning is just a subset of your overall financial plan. The right choices about how much, when, and where to save for college will have a huge impact on your overall financial plan and retirement picture. The college years really can be the most expensive time for a family. Mark and I work with families every day at Westface College Planning and also at Westface Financial Advisory to help them set up savings plans that fit their unique financial picture, taking into account every family's considered importance for rate of return, access to money, tax consequences, and future financial eligibility. The college planning process is full of difficult questions and potentially expensive pitfalls. Whether your student is already in college, is a senior in high school, or just starting their elementary school years, planning for college can never start too early. Give us a call or reserve a seat in one of our workshops to take the first step on the path to creating a really clear college funding plan now that will not jeopardize your retirement. This is Beatrice Schultz. Thanks for tuning in to College Smart Radio.
You've been listening to College Smart Radio with Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz. If you have questions on today's topic, log on to collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. That's 650-587-1559. And join us next week at this time for another edition of College Smart Radio on AM 1220 KDOW.
Information presented during today's show is not to be construed as advice meeting the particular needs of any investor. All mention of performance is based on historical experience. Should not be assumed that past performance is any indication of future results. Tax Center legal advice is not offered by Mark Guthrie or Beatrice Schultz. Please consult your tax professional for additional guidance regarding tax-related matters. Mark Guthrie and Beatrice Schultz are owners and investor advisor representatives of Westface Financial Advisory. College planning services offered through Westface College Planning. Insurance services offered through Westface Financial and Insurance Services. License number OF 35251. Financial planning and investment advisory services offered through Westface Financial Advisory.